Out front next, breaking news on the FBI search of Trump's Mar-a-Lago home, why officials became suspicious of Trump and his associates months ago, and why Trump's aides thought the FBI's investigation into his handling of classified information had stalled until FBI agents literally showed up at the door. Plus, he was Trump's attorney during the Mueller investigation. Ty Cobb is back with us on why he thinks a Trump indictment is coming. And civil war, assassinations, and a reprise of January 6th. Officials tonight tracking a surge in disturbing and violent rhetoric since news of the FBI search broke. Let's go out front. And good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, the breaking news. New details just in about why the FBI searched Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. CNN learning tonight that investigators grew increasingly concerned that Trump or his lawyers had not turned over all the documents and other materials that were government property. Officials also came to believe that Trump's representatives were not being completely truthful when it came to the documents Trump may have had in his possession. According to the Washington Post, the FBI also removed about a dozen boxes in Monday's search. And it comes as new details are emerging about the lengths the FBI went to keep the search under wraps. I mean, a search tells our Whitney Wild that the Secret Service only had a 1 hour heads up where the FBI showed up to execute the search warrant. Only 1 hour. Now, a source tells CNN that Secret Service agents validated the warrant. They met the FBI agents. They did not, though, help with the actual search. And tonight, as the Department of Justice remains silent about why it took the unprecedented step of searching a former president's home, Trump is filling the void, posting late today on his Truth Social platform, quote, "A horrible thing that took place yesterday at Mar-a-Lago. We are no better than a third world country, a banana republic." And his party is getting in line and echoing it behind him.
This is Gestapo crap, and it will not stand. The Department of Injustice needs to be cleaned out if they are going to start pretending we're some sort of banana republic.
This should scare the living daylights out of American citizens and say, we have got to change our federal government. The way our federal government has gone, it's like what we thought about the Gestapo and people like that they just go after people. What we thought about Soviet Union, what we look at Latin America. We have got to say to ourselves, this cannot be our country.
And tonight, about a dozen Republicans, House members, are at Trump's Bedminster golf course, suddenly going up to meet with the former president. After news of the FBI search broke, Trump getting a boost of support from his party. Some even coming around to the idea of Trump announcing another presidential campaign before the midterms.
The one thing I can tell you is that I believed he was going to run before. I'm stronger in my belief now.
And the support doesn't stop there and has taken a dark turn. 24 hours since news of the FBI search broke, Trump supporters are fanning the flames.
I do not think it's beyond this administrative state and their deep state apparatus to actually try to work on the assassination of President Trump.
I think they really want another January 6th. They are begging for it.
Caitlin Polance is out front live in Washington. And Caitlin, I know you've been breaking news on this, over these hours. It's been such a frenzied news cycle. You have some new information on what happened here. What are your sources telling you?
Well, Erin, this is investigation into classified document that has been going on for some time. And what we're learning now is a little bit more about the timeline. So we knew that after this issue arose where the National Archives realized that the Trump folks in Florida had documents that they shouldn't have after the presidency ended, the National Archives took those 15 boxes of documents back. And now we are learning from sources, Pamela Brown, Caitlin Collins, and I are all learning that authorities had believed that the Trump people had not returned all of the documents that they should have at that time. There's also another thing that we were learning from sources just today, and that is that there is suspicion among some of the authorities that Trump representatives are not being entirely truthful with them as they were investigating this, and this criminal investigation was ongoing. So that's a little window into what may be going on the investigation side. We also have learned from our sources a little bit about what has been going on the Trump world side of things. Until this week, advisors to the former president did not really seem to believe that this investigation was very active at this time. They seemed to believe that there was quite a bit of silence there, and that meant that it could be stalled. Obviously, they are learning this week that that is not the case. Throughout this entire thing, Aaron, there has been silence from the Justice Department, from the FBI. There's still silence today after performing this raid. That is how these things work. And I should say part of the reason it's working that way is because the Justice Department is talking to a court to get a search warrant like this, telling them what they need, why they need it, explaining it very much in court. Those would be required to do a search like this. But those documents, for us, at least on the public side and for the Trump side, those documents are under seal. So we may not be able to gain more information right now.
All right, Caitlin, thank you very much. And I want to go now to Andrew McCabe, former FBI Deputy Director, to understand this more. You know, Caitlin's sharing this latest reporting. Director, what do you make of what you're hearing so far about what happened and why it happened yesterday at Mar-a-Lago?
Well, Aaron, it's really interesting because, to be quite frank, a lot of what we've heard over the last 24 hours really doesn't make sense when we line it up with what we know took place over the last year around this issue. So we know that as early as 2021, the National Archives were negotiating with folks at Mar-a-Lago to recover things that had been taken there. We know that in January, they got the 15 boxes. We know that in February, they asked the Department of Justice to review what they had received to see if there was classified information in there. DOJ started a grand jury investigation. They submitted a subpoena to the National Archives to be able to review that material. And then, of course, you had this meeting in June. So that's not that long ago, where the DOJ and FBI agents are at Mar-a-Lago. They see this room full of documents. They later tell the folks at Mar-a-Lago to better secure that room. It doesn't make sense that from that year-long negotiation, you would all of a sudden have a search warrant. That was a complete surprise to the folks at Mar-a-Lago. So that's what I'm trying to kind of really get my head around here.
So does it seem to you that they know what they were looking for, right? That it's a needle in a haystack, but they know what the needle is. So they asked for all the documents and they got back some percentage of them and they go, but what we're looking for isn't here. So that they're very specific. They do know what they need. And it may be, in fact, something related to some other investigation. Or do you think that they literally just don't know what they want still? They just know they didn't get everything.
It's hard to think that they didn't know what was still at Mar-a-Lago after that meeting in June. In fact, it's strange to believe that they saw allegedly classified documents among those boxes in the room in the basement and didn't actually just take them with them at that moment. So obviously they continued negotiating and at some point made the decision that they needed to go forward with a search warrant. It just surprises me that the Trump folks didn't know that this was coming. And really, the only evidence we have of that is what Trump said yesterday in his comments. And we all know how typically inaccurate Trump's comments can be. So it's hard for us. We don't know enough really to be able to say what led to the search warrant yesterday.
Director, here's the issue, though, right? It's an unprecedented situation. And ordinarily, the DOJ wouldn't share any of the information that they, the probable crime that they would have, given enough evidence of to a judge to get the search warrant, right? None of that would come out. But this is an unprecedented situation, searching the home of a former president. And in the silence from the DOJ, the former president and his allies are filling that void, right, with narratives. Do you think that the DOJ in this extraordinary situation needs to come out and give more information?
I think it would be very helpful, particularly if the situation is that they basically negotiated their way to the search warrant and everybody was aware of it. And maybe that's not what happened, but it would be helpful to us and to the public to be able to tamp down the interest that's clearly focused on this thing right now. But let's remember, Aaron, this is currently the subject of a grand jury investigation. So under normal DOJ policy, they're not going to talk about that. Merrick Garland is an attorney general who's even more reticent than most. So I think that the odds of them talking are very slim. In my own experience, I can tell you in a pretty similar situation in March of 2017, when President Trump told the world that the FBI had been listening to his phone calls in Trump Tower, which was not true, a complete falsehood. We went to the Justice Department and asked them, hey, you need to make a public statement to make it clear that we didn't do this. And DOJ said, sorry, we don't comment on confirming or denying these sorts of facts. So it would not surprise me at all if DOJ maintains their silence on this issue.
All right, thank you very much, Director McCabe. I appreciate your time. And I want to go now to our panel. Caitlin Collins, our chief White House correspondent who covered the Trump presidency, Ellie Honig, our senior legal analyst and former assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, and David Urban, Republican strategist and former Trump campaign senior advisor. So, David, when you hear Director McCabe lay this out, he thinks it would be helpful if the DOJ were to come out and give more information, but unlikely that they'll do so. But very clear that he does not think that given the year long of negotiations and requests from the DOJ to Trump, that this should have been a surprise to Team Trump as it's being portrayed. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I believe it was a surprise. It was a surprise to everybody, I will tell you. I mean, I can promise you everyone on this panel sitting around remembers what they were doing last night when they heard about this and kind of was taken aback, right, with FBI at Mar-a-Lago. I find it hard to believe that, that they didn't, I find it hard to believe that they're telling that they choreographed, that they gave the information to the Trump campaign. As you know, Aaron, nothing stays secret. Once you tell one person, it's going to get out. And so I believe that they were tight-lipped about this. As you heard, the Secret Service said they had a brief period of time to get ready for this. So I don't think they were informed. I don't think the Trump campaign, the Trump team knew this was coming in any way, shape, or form. And as former Director McCabe said, I think the Department of Justice and the FBI look really bad now, and they need to get out in front and help regain some credibility with the American people.
So, Ellie, on this front, I've seen people demanding, hey, look, Trump, if you've got nothing to hide, show us the warrant you received, right? Why don't you just show it? But I want to give you a chance to explain that it isn't that simple, that even the warrant that the former president may have received may actually not give us any of the information that Director McCabe is suggesting would be helpful for the DOJ to provide.
Right, Aaron. So there's three important types of documents here. First, there's the affidavit. That is the long narrative document that the prosecutors wrote up, laying out the evidence and laying out what they believe the crimes are. That could be 50, 100 pages. Donald Trump does not have that. We don't have that in the public. Donald Trump will not get that unless and until he's charged. Now, then there's the search warrant itself. Donald Trump does have this. This is the one piece of paper. It's basically a form that the agents had to show him or his team when they did the warrant. Mostly that's logistical information. Here's the premises to be searched. Here's generally speaking the type of evidence we're looking for. Here's the judge who signed. Here's the deadline. But sometimes that document has an attachment. It varies by jurisdiction. It even varies by individual prosecutor that could lay out the names of the crimes that are alleged. So we don't know whether that's on there, but Donald Trump does have that document. And finally, there's a document called a return, which is basically a receipt. It's, hey, here's the documents, here's the items that we took out of your home, but it's fairly general. It's not going to list every piece of paper. It's going to say X number of boxes. I guess our reporting is about 12 boxes, however many laptops, however many phones. Donald Trump does have that as well. So he can release those two documents. They give us some information, but probably not much.
Probably not much. But again, important to note that he has something he could put out that he categorically hasn't, even as he says that, all the information should be out there. So, Caitlin, in response to this, Trump, doesn't just post those things on Truth Social. He has a highly produced campaign style ad that comes out today. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says today that after speaking to Trump, quote, the one thing I can tell you is that I believed he was going to run before. I am stronger in my belief now. Now, Caitlin, you've been talking to your sources in Trump world. Does Trump see this right now as a pure win politically? Does it accelerate his time frame here to announce a possible bid for the White House?
I'm not sure that based on our reporting, Aaron, we would frame it as he views it as a pure political win. I think he is certainly taking the situation and using it to his political advantage. He has been talking about the fact that so many Republicans have come out and supported him and criticized the Justice Department, criticized Attorney General Merrick Garland. As you heard, people like Senator Rick Scott earlier on Fox News, many of these Republican governors that are rumored to be 2024 presidential candidates, all criticizing this. And so he certainly is boosted by that factor. But I also think this is a very real concern. And going back to what David said, this caught a lot of people in Trump's orbit off guard. And as Caitlin was noting earlier, our reporting is that people in his orbit had thought this investigation had largely stalled. It's not clear why they thought it had stalled, given it was just a few months ago in June that investigators had paid a visit to Mar-a-Lago, had seen the room where these documents were being stored, the ones that had not been returned to the National Archives. But they had kind of been under the impression that this investigation wasn't really going anywhere. Clearly, it did yesterday with this search warrant. And so I think there are two sides to this where there are very real concerns, but also Trump is using it as a political boost.
New tonight, lock and load. That's just one of the many comments that are part of a disturbing rise in violent chatter online after the FBI executed that search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. The anger so strong that at points there was more than one tweet every second talking about civil war. Whitney Wild is out front, and she has been tracking all this, watching it so closely. Whitney, tell me more about the specific rhetoric that we are seeing online and how closely it is echoing what we saw before January 6th.
Well, when you look at what people are saying and they're using words like civil war, it's a lot like what we saw prior to January 6th. And, you know, Aaron, multiple law enforcement sources are telling CNN they are closely monitoring this violent rhetoric, which, as you point out, has really spiked in the 24 hours since this news broke. For example, a congressional security source told CNN that shortly after the search warrant news became public, the Capitol Police began discussions about planning for any potential issues that might arise. The big concern for that source is that there might be violence directed at members of Congress or members of federal law enforcement. And when you look at the language, it's really easy to see why this person was so concerned. So, for example, here are just some of the posts that my colleague Donnie O'Sullivan has found. Here's one directed toward Attorney General Merrick Garland. This person saying, "I'll just say it, Garland needs to be assassinated. Simple as that." Another user posted, "Kill all feds." Users also encouraged other people to post the address of the judge they believed signed off on the search warrant, writing, "I see a rope around his neck." And that was posted, Aaron, underneath a photo of that judge. This is all coming up on the very same forum where researchers had previously found talk of violence and discussion on how to attack police officers, other members of law enforcement. And this was the rhetoric that was going on January 6th, Aaron. The point here being that the very same place that violent rhetoric originated before January 6th is the very same place it is originating from now. Back to you.
Oh, all right. Whitney, thank you very much. Really sobering. I want to go now to Republican Governor of Arkansas, Asa Hutchinson. He was also a U.S. attorney in the Justice Department under President Reagan, so understands this from that side very well as well. So, Governor, you just heard Whitney's reporting. And in that context, Dan Cox, who is the Republican nominee for governor in the state of Maryland, has just posted a statement on Facebook. He says in part, and I'll read it to you, Governor, "This FBI raid of Trump's home is nothing short of communist Stasi police state tactics. As governor, I will use the 9th and 10th Amendments, the Maryland Constitution and Declaration of Rights, the Maryland State Police, and the Maryland Guard to stand against all rogue actions of this out-of-control, tyrannical Biden administration with fierce tenacity." Governor, how dangerous is this type of rhetoric?